Hello, I'm CJ Werleman. In this episode, I'm going to call on Muslims to think about Palestine while imagining a single Islamic world united under a single banner as a single country. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our show. Now let's get into it. 30,000 Palestinians have now been killed since October 7th, constituting the most vicious genocide in the 21st century. But the worst is still yet to come, as Israel forces famine and starvation upon those who have somehow managed to escape the merciless Zionist killing machine to date. Starving to death is said to be one of the cruelest and most agonizing ways to die, but upwards of 200 Palestinian children are dying this way each and every day, right now, leaving us to watch on helplessly as emaciated babies take their final breaths of life with not a single morsel of food in their stomachs, and as young children rummage through the trash in desperate search for anything that might resemble food. And as newly orphaned children wander the streets in a hopeless search for their dead parents and family members. Can you imagine this kind of horror? Doctors Without Borders says children as young as 5 years of age have expressed a desire to commit suicide because of this ceaseless Zionist criminality. Can you imagine that? 5-year-old orphans expressing no will to live. That we have allowed this to happen and continue to happen without intervention should shame and humiliate us all. But our collective rage towards the Israeli and American perpetrators of this genocide is not nearly enough, because none of this would be happening were the Palestinian people first not betrayed and discarded by the leaders of the Muslim world. And the Palestinian people are begging for you to understand this. They desperately want you to understand exactly who they hold most responsible for this endless victimization at the hands of the criminal Zionist state.
اسمعوا يا حكام العرب، اسمعوا يا اللي تركتونا في غزة نموت، يا اللي تركتونا في غزة ننباد، يا اللي تركتونا في غزة أطفالنا ونسائنا وشيوخنا وشبابنا.
Even the starving children of Gaza are acutely aware of how Arab rulers have done nothing to alleviate their suffering. This betrayal runs much deeper than most people are even aware. Emirati Arabs proudly display their Zionist loyalties in the streets of Dubai, as Saudi Arabia vows to normalize ties with Israel even in the midst of genocide, while at the same time refusing to recognize the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. And as Egypt builds even bigger walls along its borders to prevent Palestinians finding temporary safety and shelter in the Sinai. And if none of that makes your skin crawl with utter disgust, then consider this, that at the same time Israel is deliberately starving Palestinian children to death in Gaza, Muslim countries Jordan and Turkey continue to rank as the top 2 exporters of vegetable and fruit products to the perpetrator of this genocide. Even as Malaysia, a true shining light in the Muslim world, urges these same countries to cut all ties with the Zionist regime. But the terrible truth of the matter is this, that these Middle Eastern regimes are direct beneficiaries of American military and economic power. The United States lavishes money and power on Arab rulers who are unwilling to lift a single finger for the Palestinian people out of fear that doing so will upset their US benefactors. In other words, these regimes profit from US imperialism, and they are not even the slightest bit embarrassed about it.
A strategic partner with the United States. UAE is not going to go and fight any of the United States allies. We're going to fight in the same line. We're going to defeat the same enemy. We're going to be there to support you like we did in Afghanistan. Your troops were moving under our aircrafts protecting them. And I think that is how the US should look at it. Having a strategic ally is more important than a commercial deal, because we are not, like I said, enemies. United Arab Emirates does not want to be a friend of the United States. We want to be the best friend of the United States.
And don't get me started on the Iranian regime and its proxy forces. Your so-called axis of resistance is nothing more than shameless propaganda, meant only to boost the Iranian government's influence in the region. It promises to attack Israel, but instead bombs and kills Muslims in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, and does so even today. And then there's the United Nations, the Arab League, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. All have not only completely failed in their duties to protect Palestinians from genocide, but also have failed Muslims in India, Kashmir, East Turkestan, and Myanmar. Mostly because these international institutions care only about preserving the interests of great Western powers and the oil-producing states in the Arab Gulf. Which now brings me full circle to the point of this episode. And here it goes. If Arabs and Muslims don't start thinking or imagining a new future, then they will never escape Western and Zionist imposed tyranny and oppression. There just has to be a new way of thinking. There has to be a better way. Muslims represent a quarter of the world's population, but most live in crushing poverty and/or under the heel of oppressive regimes that serve only to enrich and empower their rulers. Now, I'm not pretending there's an easy solution at hand, but it starts with thinking outside the box and imagining a new world, one in which all Muslims live in peace and tranquility. So with that in mind, I want to share with you a speech that I came across this week by an Islamic preacher named Sheikh Hamad Saeed, who says Palestinians and other Arab peoples of the Middle East will never escape oppression until they, first, free themselves from the constraints imposed upon them by European colonial-era borders created in the 20th century under the dreaded Sykes-Picot Agreement.
الذين يطالبون الدول العربية يعني فتح المعابر وفتح الحدود، كيف تخاطب إنسانا أنشئ بميثاق سايكس بيكو؟ هذا لا يخاطب يعني، لأنه في واد وأنت في واد آخر. هذا مشروعه غير مشروعك. أنت مشروعك التحرير، هو مشروع العبودية. أنت مشروعك إخراج اليهود من فلسطين، ومشروعه إبقاء اليهود في فلسطين. أنا أخاطب الشباب أن لا تخاطبوا الأنظمة العربية ولا تسألوها عن هذا الأمر، فليست له أهل حتى نخاطبها، لأن الأمة التي تخاطبكم تحسن الظن بكم، وما عدنا نحسن الظن بأحد من هؤلاء.
Certainly, there's a lot to digest there. And to be clear, neither he nor I am advocating armed struggle or resistance, remembering the Arab Spring brought only further misery and bloodshed to the Middle East. The ultimate lesson here is the global Muslim population must start thinking as one Islamic community or one collective ummah, one in which the rules are established by Muslims and not Western powers and the guardians of European colonialism. A united Islamic world, guided by the principles of Islam, including equality, justice and peace, would never allow a genocide to take place in Palestine, and it would never allow 200 million Muslims in India and Kashmir to suffer a similar fate. Again, I don't have the answers here. I'm urging you only to think about new possibilities, like others have in imagining a single Islamic world united under a single banner as a single country, because as it stands, an overwhelming majority of the global Muslim population is disempowered and voiceless, as illustrated by Saudi Arabia, where 96% of its citizens oppose ties with Israel, but their rulers embrace the Zionist state anyway. A new way, a better way is possible here. First you have to believe it. The rest will fall into place if enough people believe you too. People power is helping change and reshape the Middle East as we speak, as evident in the way the boycott movement known as BDS has caused Israel's economy to drop by a staggering 20%. This is the kind of change I'm talking about. I will leave it with you to start thinking about ways you can answer his important question. Anyway, that's my time for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask you please support our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJWirleman. We can't produce, sustain and grow the show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.